Hello and welcome to the recording of the Partners 2020 Ask the Expert session for Media and PR. This session was hosted by our careers consultant Kate Rothery, and she was joined by our guests Sarah-Jayne Taylorson, who's the Copywriting and PR Executive at Roxoa, and Gayle Woodruffe, the Head of Production Service at Northern Film and Media. Each of our guests will be starting off with a short talk and presentation to tell you a little bit more about themselves and their careers to date, before Kate leads them in some questions that have been previously submitted by you, the partner students. Without any further ado, we're going to hand over to Sarah-Jayne to tell you a little bit more about herself, her time at university, and her top tips for working in this industry.
My name's Sarah-Jayne. I graduated from Newcastle in 2018, so that was with my Masters in Media and Public Relations. Before that, I did undergraduate degree in English Literature, and I've had a couple of different roles and work experience before I got to my job now. So in terms of work experience, I'd done stuff at like marketing agencies, magazines, things like that. So it was all quite media based. And then I decided I wanted to go and get my master's to specialise in something a bit more specific for the job I wanted to get. So before my role now, I was a social media and marketing coordinator for a group of hotels in the Lake District, which is where I'm actually from. So that was obviously social media, running all the Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts for, I think it was like 5 or 6 hotels and spas and bars and lots of different things. And then I decided I wanted to come back to the Northeast. So I got my role, which is now copywriting and PR executive at Roxoa. So Roxoa is actually a group of online jewellery stores. So we've got 4 stores in our portfolio. They're all fully run by us, marketed by us. We're quite a small team. There's only 13 or so of us. So we're very busy though. As you can imagine, with it being 4 different stores, there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of different ways to approach it. We have different markets for each store, which means that, it's a lot to take on in terms of spreading yourself quite thinly, but good, and you're getting loads of experience, which is nice. So in terms of how my degree helped me with my job, it has been really invaluable. Like I say, my undergraduate degree was English, which I loved. I love reading, and that's kind of one of my main passions, but I wanted something that would give me like employable, really practical skills, and I felt like my master's degree did that. So for those of you that don't know, like PR or public relations is raising awareness, increasing engagement for an organization or a brand. So that part of my job involves a lot of outreach, speaking to, like, trying to get in touch with editors, journalists, so basically anyone that could be interested in any of our brands, and that includes our own customers. So yeah, it's kind of trying to secure coverage for the group and the 4 brands themselves. So for example, my most recent project, I was working on wedding jewellery. We're just kind of trying to get into the market of wedding jewellery. So talking to a lot of wedding magazines and bloggers and things like that. Because what I actually did my dissertation in influencer marketing, which is quite topical at the moment. It was all to do with the regulations around influencer marketing. And I picked that because I was really interested in it. It's something that I myself consume as a person on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. So I use that, like all the stuff that I learned from my dissertation, quite a lot in my daily job, because it involves like building partnerships with bloggers and things like that to get some good coverage for the stores. So I'd say if anyone was interested in anything like that, it's a really good route to go down now, because it's becoming a bigger and bigger trend. What else? A lot of it is like campaign planning. So that comes from everything from like the creative side, so coming up with campaigns for things like around Christmas and Valentine's Day. And a lot of that has come from my degree. We learned a lot about the technical and the practical side of planning campaigns and all the strategies and the techniques and the tactics that you have to use to sort of get the most out of it for the business. Because at the end of the day, it's about increasing engagement, but also increasing sales as well, because we are a brand, a store. We want people to buy our stuff. What else have I been doing? Yeah, so obviously Public relations is quite specific, but media, there was a lot of like theoretical stuff about the media in my degree, which was great because it's really good to have that understanding, that core understanding of the media now. And that's, you know, magazines, TV news, social media, film, everything. There's so many different parts of it. So it's really good to have that strong theoretical understanding of things, and you can kind of figure out where you want to go from those different strands, I suppose. Also did like modules and things like design, which is great because you can learn some really practical skills like using Photoshop and InDesign, which if you work in any sort of marketing or communications role are pretty invaluable now. It's a good thing to have. It's a good string to your bow. In terms of advice, for what I would like advice I'd give for people, obviously I'm quite new in my career, but I have been in and out of uni, so I've been in and out of the job market, and it's tough. It's tough to get a job that's creative, but it's so worthwhile doing. And if you are a creative person or you like communicating with people, it's definitely worth sticking at. The one thing I would say is get as much experience as you can while you're at uni, because your degree is so important, but what will back it up as well is doing work experience or placements or internships if you can. I don't know if it's still offered, but when I was at Newcastle, there was internships that were offered through the careers service that you could get a bursary for. So, which is really helpful because often it's really hard to find the experience and get paid. And I know, I mean, I myself had to work a part-time job while I was at uni. So it's about balancing things, but the Northeast is really good, and there's a really strong communications community in the Northeast. So if you start going out there and meeting people and networking with people and doing maybe a week here and there, a part-time internship while you're at uni, all it'll do is just boost your CV and give you really good practical experience. And I think looking back, I wish I'd done it a lot sooner. I wish I'd gone and sat in an agency. Even you can be quite proactive about it, and a lot of places are quite happy to let you come in and shadow people. And that kind of leads on to my next point, is that I personally think it's a really nice place. I know a lot of people come to uni to Newcastle, but it's a lovely place to start your career as well and to make a career for yourself. A lot of people think that media jobs and PR and communications, everything's in London, and that's absolutely not the case. There's so much going on in the Northeast. Like I say, there's a really good community. So once you get to know people, it's all about just broadening your network a little bit, I think. My other thing would probably be that you need to find what you're passionate about as well. So obviously, if you work in this sort of area, there's so many different avenues you could work in. And for me, one of my main passions was like fashion. I did like a fashion magazine internship, and I didn't really consider that I could be doing something more on a brand side. But if you really love it, you'll love your job. Like I get to do really good things. Like I work on photo shoots and stuff, and I think there is this impression that all of that is in London. You can only do stuff like that in London, but there's so many exciting like brands and companies. And if you're interested in it, there'll be something that you can apply your job to. So that would kind of be like how my main bit of advice for people looking to go into this sort of job. So yeah, that's me.
Perfect, thank you. So some really excellent advice, and definitely reinforcing what we try and sort of tell people, the experience and the contacts, and getting them as early as possible. And we certainly still do run our sort of internships program through the career service. We've I believe still got the funding there for when we go back after COVID-19. Hopefully there'll still be some positions, but it's definitely something that we always encourage, and we get a lot of marketing type of sort of vacancies through. They're probably one of the highest number of types of internships that we get through. So definitely something that students can look into once they start university, or hopefully at least by semester 2, that will have some more opportunities coming through from them. So that was fantastic. Thanks for the chat. Gayle, I'll hand over to you. Do you want to go through yours? Hopefully you should be able to share your screen, because I know you do have a few slides, and I'll hand over to you.
Firstly, yeah, everything that Sarah-Jayne said with regards to what you need to do to get out there. I'm not going to share my presentation straight away because I'm aware that the first part of what you asked me to do is to talk about how I got to where I am. And it was very, very different route in that I left school at 16 because we didn't have a sixth form. Went to a sixth form college, which I absolutely hated because, well, no, I didn't really hate it, but nobody made me go anywhere. Nobody made me turn up to lessons. Nobody made me do anything. And I went from kind of being straight A student to somebody who had better things to do. So halfway through that, doing my A levels, I actually got a job in the civil service. It was never meant to be where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. It was a job to get me to the next place. And actually, it was also so I didn't have to go home and take a report card home saying I hadn't been at college. Don't advise that at all. So I did that. I worked for Department of Employment for a number of years and then moved into what was benefit fraud at the time, which you can have very divided opinions on it, but actually I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting. Not just, you know, catching people doing things that they shouldn't do, but also working out why it happened and what actually needed to be done so that people didn't have to go out and earn a little bit of extra money. And, you know, I very much felt that it's easy to say you're only entitled to this amount of money, but actually if you can't live on that, that's when... So anyway, the whole system just doesn't quite work, but never mind. From there was a period in the civil service where there was no promotion, and I applied for a secondment with what was Northern Screen Commission, and I applied to be there for 6 months, and after 10 months they asked me if I would stay. So ended the civil service career, moved to a funded organisation, non-profit making, constantly under there, we've got another 6 months, we've got another 2 years with regards to the funding and what we did. But actually I found a lot of the skills that I'd had from being a civil servant. I'm organised, boringly organised. If there's a flow chart to follow, I'm there, I'm your girl. And a lot of it, you know, working on my own initiative, getting out there and doing things, actually making a job for myself. It was a very small team, there were 3 of us. And the person I took over for had done a gap year from university and left 6 weeks before I started, and nobody could tell me what they'd been doing. So my job was go and take some photographs of some places that could be used as film locations. And that was my first move into kind of film and TV, if you like. I still wouldn't necessarily say I'm desperate to work in film and TV. I'm still an organiser. But what happened with regards to my education is I'd left college, but I still felt that I wanted to continue studying. So completely unfilm related, I qualified as a counsellor. I did A-level English, I did an A-level in psychology. I then did a degree in computer studies, none of which really relates to film and TV. But what it does for me is that it helps me understand. I like to think that a lot of my job is problem solving. Film and telly sounds dead glamorous. And, you know, for the person standing with the camera or the person telling them what to do or the actor or actress in an amazing period costume, yeah, maybe that bit's glamorous. But a lot of the other jobs are very process driven. It's like organising an event, it's management. And they, in a lot of cases, they're the skills shortages as well. So whilst none of the particular subjects really are what I work in, I do feel that the skills I learned through those really do support what I'm doing now. And actually they were things I was really interested in. Not that I'm not interested in film and TV, obviously. So I mean, the things that kind of got me into that job, and that also moved me from being literally a location photographer to now I'm kind of head of the production service, was, you know, just as Sarah-Jayne was saying, the networking. If there was something that needed doing, I would volunteer to do it. As at the time an ex-civil service servant working with creatives, if we needed a process, I was going to draw up a process, I was going to have a plan, I was going to find a way to make it work. And all of that kind of goes back to kind of the troubleshooting element of what I did. So now I'm going to try and share my screen. Let's see how this goes. So Northern Film and Media, we're a creative industries development agency for the North East of England, and we work to help people develop in their careers and in their projects. We support regional and commercial film and TV, Currently, we are a funded non-profit making organisation, and what that means is we have to work in the areas we're funded to work in. Now, whilst my roles cover the whole of the North East, there is quite a bit of what Northern Film and Media do that comes under our Tees Valley Screen project, because that is funded by Tees Valley Combined Authority and ERDF, long may it continue. So the things that we do at Northern Film and Media, we look at professional development, we work with artists with a screen-based practice, there's the production service, which is obviously the most exciting bit because it's my bit, and the Northern Film and Media Academy. What the production service itself and the job that I went from taking photographs to actually developing into a bit of a system is all about getting film and TV companies to come to the North East and film. And while they're here, making sure that we make the most out of them and that we get as many local people involved as we possibly can, and that we, you know, we shout and scream about the fact that we've had them come and film with us and all of that kind of stuff. So the stuff that we find for them is locations, back to my very first role with what was Northern Screen Commission. Crew, facilities and local authority contacts. So basically we like to think that if they're filming in the North East, they can't do it without us, because we can provide them with all of the information on all of these things, and it's free of charge. And that, you know, working with the crew and facilities is really useful as well, because we can make sure that they find a camera operator in the North East, or a makeup artist who's in the North East, or give opportunities to people who are beginning their careers and looking for runners positions, and they don't bring them all with them. Because quite often what we find is the main body of the production will come from outside of the region, and they'll think they need to bring everybody with them. So one of my biggest bugbears is that they do that. I'm constantly trying to make sure that they engage some of the really experienced and really talented people we've got in the region. So it's been my pleasure to work on a number of productions, and I'm just going to kind of flash them up here just so anybody who's thinking about working in film and TV and thinking, I can't do that while I'm in the North East. All of the things I'm about to kind of flash up are things that we've worked on and have been here. A tournament for me is probably one of the production service biggest involvement, and that they started off asking could they film at Redcar for a week, and they might need to close the road. And the conversation started there, and we kind of, well, you won't want to do that in the school holidays, will you? Because that would be mad. To close the road by the beach in the school holidays would be mad. No, we won't do that. That's not going to happen. I think I was there for a day, a fortnight. I felt like I needed a flat in Redcar. I was there that often. We worked really closely with the production team to help them with their locations. I'm going to show you some of those. But also to make sure that they hired local people, they used local kit. There was 1,000 extras on set. They were all local people. The people who put those 1,000 extras in their costumes were local. The makeup artists, we took over one of the leisure centres, and there was row upon row of costume and banks of makeup, and the number of people involved was just amazing. And actually, they did close the road along the seafront for 8 weeks, right the way through the 6-week school holidays. But I'd like to think with a little input from us, we managed to make sure that that was all pretty smooth. We did 1 million meetings between the council and the residents and the production team, just so that everybody knew what to expect. We literally went, when you can see the front, the houses along the front that were all dressed, and you know, the ones that look ruined and all the rest of it, we actually went to every single one of those houses and talked to every single person and got everyone on board. And with the exception of one guy who complained because he forgot what day it was, it went really, really smoothly. But we even got into conversations with the man who has the right to fish salmon off the coast of Redcar. I didn't even know there was a thing like that. But we worked very closely with them. We also worked on alternative parking for everybody who was coming out. We started off with, there'll be about 10 trucks. And I had a conversation with the lady who was from the council communications manager, who was amazing. And I just went, it's not going to be 10 trucks. Please, it's not going to be 10 trucks. It's going to be so much more. They ended up with 72 trucks. Across the weekend, before they started filming, they had over 10,000 people just come and see what they built on Redcar Seafront. and it was amazing. And that for me, it's a while ago now, but that for me, we were involved in so many aspects, and I hope managed to bring so many regional people into it and really benefit the North East. And actually, if you've seen the film, our 8 minutes is the best 8 minutes in there. And that's me for that. We've also deal with TV drama. So we've had Vera, which is pretty constant. And actually, we're just waiting to find out when they're coming back to shoot the next series. They were all held up because of, this little thing we've got with the virus. Inspector George Gently, but we did leave him dead on a beach. So I don't think he's coming back. We've done a couple of children's things. Dumping Ground, which is a follow-on from Tracy Beaker. There's an awful lot of regional people get work on Dumping Ground. It runs for about 7 months of the year. So along with Vera, it's a big employer in the region. Danny and Mick are filming series 3 and 4 up in a leisure centre. They are halfway through and hoping to start back soon. We've also had period dramas. We've had Downton Abbey, a couple of Christmas specials in there. The Paradise, which was up against Mr. Selfridge and unfortunately lost that battle, but the Paradise was so much better. Costumes were fabulous. Some Netflix stuff, which is Netflix is the next big thing apparently, so they keep telling me. So we've had Outlaw King, Frontier and The Last Kingdom have all shot with us. Outlaw King was up in Berwick, and they completely transformed the area. If anybody knows Berwick, the area of alongside the bridge and the quayside just looked amazing in that. We keep getting Ken Loach back, which is lovely. Sorry We Missed You and I, Daniel Blake. And, big feature films, 1917 is probably the biggest one we've had recently down in Teesside. We had Avengers, which were out at Durham Cathedral and up at Alnwick, I believe. Transformers, similarly, went to Alnwick and to Bamborough. They closed down the centre of Newcastle, 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, caused complete chaos. Then they didn't put any of the footage in the film, but hey, they've got it somewhere. You never know. You never know. And the big one that kind of everybody knows that we got and was completely down to what was at the time Northern Screen Commission would be Harry Potter. We had quite a bit of the first Harry Potter before anybody knew what Harry Potter was. I met Daniel Radcliffe before he'd ever actually become Harry Potter, when he was told, this is the lady that found us this castle, which was lovely. I'm sure he doesn't remember it, but I do. And on the back of that, I talked a little bit about how we try to get people into these productions. All of the relationships we've had with those productions made us come up with what is the Northern Film and Media Academy. And this is anybody who is interested in working in film and TV, and you don't need to have studied media or film production. You could be an accountant, you could be an electrician, you could be a makeup artist. We talked about, Sarah-Jayne mentioned fashion earlier. Any of those things, there are so many different roles in film and TV. And so many people think it's just about the person holding the camera. There's so much more to it. So with the Academy, we work to try and make sure that we can introduce people who are starting out in their careers to these productions, and that we know who they are and we can help support them. So we run careers and networking events, we do boot camps, we do masterclasses, and we do workshops, all so that when you get the opportunity to work in film and TV, firstly, you know how lucky you are, because as Sarah-Jayne said, it can be quite competitive, and you just have to look around everybody graduating from the unis to see it's going to be quite competitive. And we hope that this helps people understand the industry that they're getting into and what they need to do to succeed in that. And that's my presentation, and that's my details on there, but I'm going to stop the share now. There you go. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That was so interesting. And like you say, the skills that you use, that you've got all your creative skills, but those organisation skills, the project management skills, the problem solving skills that they'll pick up from studying any degree really.
Yeah.
Is something to stress, and something that they'll pick up in their extracurricular experience, whether it's related or not. We get so many people come in that go, I can't get a job in this industry, I've not got any related experience, and you go, well, you've been doing this for so long, what's all those transferable skills about? So yeah, it's good that they can hear that from someone else as well. Sorry, I thought you would say something.
No, and I think I completely agree with what Sarah-Jayne said. So much about this is networking, and everybody's a little bit terrified of it, but actually if you think about it, it's building relationships rather than networking. It doesn't sound quite so scary, but film and TV, so much of it is about who you know. Then you've got to prove yourself, but actually they're very small teams who work really hard for short periods of time they need to know that the people they're working with know what they're doing. So actually, you do need all of those skills, but getting it, and that is the net, be somebody people want to be around.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work these past 2 weeks with the partner students about starting them to get to think about networking, or we call it making career contacts, so it's not as scary. And we've got them all up on LinkedIn and things like that. So I suppose to both of you, what would sort of be your biggest networking or making career contacts tips that you could give to the students that may be a bit nervous about doing it?
I mean, one of the things that I am always aware, I do various talks at different universities, educational establishments, and one of the things that strikes me is how many really good speakers you get in, and it's for the students. I think it's understanding that those people are there because they recognise the need for the next generation, and they're there because they want to help, and they're there because they want to answer your questions and help support you. So if somebody says, ask me something, ask them something. And if somebody gives you their contact details, contact them. Come up with something you want to talk to them about. Ask them questions. Take their advice, and then you can go back to them and kind of go, you said this, and I did that, and this is what happened. What's next? Everybody loves a little bit of flattery, a little bit of an ego boost. And also people like to be able to share their knowledge. And I think your first network is always the people who are sat next to you when you're at university. But actually, universities now introduce them to so many amazing people. And just be aware that, yeah, everybody does find networking a little bit scary. Prep for it. Have a number of questions you're going to ask. And the most important thing for me is know when to walk away. Don't ask a question, get your answer, thank them profusely, and leave. Because you don't want them remembering as that guy who stood by my shoulder for the next half an hour and I couldn't shake him. So they would be mine. Sorry.
No, perfect. Anything you want to add, Sarah-Jayne?
Well, I agree with all of that, really. I think it is a daunting thing, and but I agree with Gayle in that people do want to help, and it can seem like those people are so far ahead of you and that they've got everything sorted and they're like not willing to give you any time. But actually, and I think, like you mentioned LinkedIn, Kate, and I think even LinkedIn, Twitter, like we were really encouraged on our course to get to have a professional Twitter account that was that employers could look at, that you could reach out to people. It is a lot easier these days with the help of social media. If you are the kind of person that is a little bit more reserved, I think it's a good tool to just connect with somebody, and then if you see them in person, you kind of already established a little bit of a connection there. You'll find that, like, obviously it's a way down the line, but when you get to projects and dissertations and things like that, you do need to interview professional people on some courses, and like just by having that first little step that you've approached them, it shows them that you're keen and that you know who you should be talking to, that you're involved in the community for the profession that you were interested in. And just, yeah, it does sound really daunting, and I would say the idea of it is much worse than the actual doing it.
And I think if there's anybody you're going to approach, find out about them first.
Definitely.
Don't ever do it to whom it may concern. What's the elevator pitch? What do you want to sell yourself to that person? And actually, if you can say, I saw you did such and such, it was amazing, I loved it because, and I'm Gayle and I do this. Do you know?
Yeah.
But I know, Sarah-Jayne, you said earlier on that you did things while you were at university that were outside of your course and you wished you'd done more. Again, university is a safe place to do those things. And, you are cosseted in the bosom of the university with all of the support, help and guidance. And it's much safer and feels less daunting, I think, than doing it when suddenly you're on your own.
Yeah, you've kind of got, like a bit of a safety net there. And I think Newcastle University is really good in terms of they do a lot of the work to introduce you to those people that you should be taught, that you want to be talking to, and you have lots of opportunities to do those things. So I would just say, if you get the opportunities, go along. You never know where it'll lead to when you graduate, like when you want a bit of work experience.
And we like you say, have so many different opportunities for them to do that. We have people that come in and see on your course, if you're interested in sort of any sort of creative profession, we've got a whole event dedicated to that. We run something called Creative Careers in March, that's usually sort of in our students' union. but it probably will be looking at some sort of virtual event for this coming year. But there will be something there where you can sort of speak to the industry professionals. Even sessions like this, we try and encourage you to come along, to ask your questions, but to follow up after and do a bit of pre-LinkedIn stalking, do a bit of Twitter stalking, and see what you can find out. Just get that name in Google for the speakers that's going to be there. You'll be able to prep a few questions because you will be interested in it. You're coming to the event for some reason. So have those things there to ask, and that can take some of the nerves away sometimes. We've got a couple of questions that have come through from students that haven't been able to attend that I'll go through. I think the first one that we had here was from someone on our media course called Jordan, and it was for Gayle, and he asked what kind of work experience would be most advisable for a student in order to get a career / job in TV, magazine, film, print, that type of sector?
Well, obviously TV and film is kind of my area. Work experience is really competitive, but it is absolutely out there. I guess some of my advice about it would be the same as it would be for networking. Work out where you want to be and find a reason why they should want you and give you the opportunity. But also to think, if you want to stay in the Northeast, there is something about trying to think outside of kind of high-end TV and the top-end budget feature films, simply because we get them, but it's not work here all year round. So perhaps thinking about some of the corporate companies, people who do online content, that kind of stuff, it's all really, really valuable. And they may get an opportunity to try more things in the time that they're there for their work experience. I often get that, I just can't find any work experience anywhere. And in one of the presentations I put up a list because I Googled TV work experience, and the number of hits I got really, really quickly from big companies who all have systems for getting people into work experience. So it takes a little bit of research. It is competitive, but they are there, and the right people will find them. And so think about those kinds of programs. There are, we talked about social media a little bit. There are a couple of really good websites that do that. There is the unit list and the call sheet, and there's something called TV Water Cooler. The links are on the Academy part of our website if anybody wanted to find them. But also Facebook groups. I be very careful, there's a million. Make sure you find the right ones. But there's about 3 or 4, again, that we not recommend, but have found to be really useful. So finding the right ones of those, and you might find that they post a job and that's not what you're looking for, but actually if you do a little bit more research into that company, you might be able to connect with them that way. It isn't as easy as I want a work experience in a shop, that kind of thing. You do have to go looking for it. But sitting watching TV of an evening and seeing the programs that you quite like to work on and seeing who the production company is, and maybe even finding the head of department you'd like to work in. And these days, with the wonders that is Google, finding somebody and being able to drop them an email, having done your research, I would say 10 targeted emails where you absolutely know who you're talking to is better than 1,000 to whom it may concern. Absolutely. So.
Yeah, that speculative approach is something that we really try and encourage, because yes, you will find some of them out there online that are being advertised, and the big companies, I think like Warner Brothers, for example, do placement years that you can go and do, but the actual value you get from just looking at these places that are advertising jobs or even temporary freelance work, you might not be applying to that, but you then know who's looking for someone in that area. You can then follow that on, do that bit of research on that website. So it's using those research skills and like you say, trying to get in there directly rather than just emailing an HR team, for example. It's probably not going to go too far on that route.
Yeah, and I think don't be disheartened.
Yeah.
It is competitive. If they haven't asked you to get in touch with them, they might not get back to you. Mm-hmm. Most people will tell you that they will keep the details even if they don't get back to you, but not to be disheartened and to, email them again later. Don't think that you're on the blacklist because you emailed at the wrong time. For me, it's about being tenacious and persistent. Don't let it turn into stalking, but just, have that whole draft of people that you'd be interested in doing some work experience with, and just contact them regularly, follow what they're doing on Twitter. We had, a bit of an aside, we were running an event on factual content, and one of my colleagues wanted to get in touch with the guy who was responsible for the Mighty Red Car. We tried all ways, and eventually she DM'd him on Twitter and he replied. So, you know, it's worth all of these different avenues thinking about how you approach people, because everybody seems to have their preferred method, and you can't necessarily know that until you try.
I would just adding on from that, I would say if you do approach people, you've mentioned it briefly there about finding a name. There's nothing wrong with emailing somebody and saying, can you tell me who I need to address this application to, or tweeting somebody, or like for this job that I'm in now, I rang the employer and I said, who do I address my CV to? I think that puts you forward instantly, because you're showing that you're conscientious, you're committed, you do your research, and it does stand you in a good stead, I think, for getting those experiences. Don't be afraid to just ask.
Yeah, we say the same thing, that those speculative approaches, you don't send just the generic email. You first, if you just know the company, make a call and ask who you need to speak to. You're not making the call, ask for an internship or a bit of a placement. You're just asking the right person to speak to, because then you've got someone to follow up with, rather than just a random company name or company email address. So that speculative approach can yield results, but it's also a great way to build a bit of resilience as well, which is something that employers massively look for. And even if sort of the first 6 months don't bear any fruit, you then, when you're coming to interview for your bit of work experience, you can say, but look, I'm persistent, I stuck with this for 6 months. So it can turn into an excellent bit of an anecdote in an interview, or an example in an interview where you've come across barrier, but you've worked to make sure that you get through it. So it's something that, even if it doesn't quite go your way to begin with, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You can come up with a good interview example. So I'll move on to another question. We've got one here for we've got quite a few here for Sarah-Jayne, and we've had Alex, who has been very interested in your career story, and he sent a couple of ones through. So I'm just going to pick a couple of them. A bit more general, I think you'll probably both be able to answer this. He asks, what's the best and worst career decision you've ever made?
For me, the best decision I made was the last job I was in. I'll be honest, I really wasn't happy, and it was my first proper job out of university. So I felt like on paper it looked great. It looked like a really nice job for a great company. Lake District, loads of people want to live in the Lake District. It sounds great. But for me, the culture of the company just didn't fit me at all. I wasn't happy. And I wouldn't advise people do this, but it was a risk, but I just couldn't. I kind of made the call then quite early on that it wasn't going to work about 6 months down the line. And it massively paid off, because within a couple of weeks, I found this job, which again, on paper, I was like, oh, we'll see what it looks like. And it turned out to be a really, really great job. So I'd say don't beat yourself up if something's not right, if it looks perfect. Sometimes the failures end up becoming the things that lead you into what is much better for you later on.
Mm-hmm. And with things like that, when they happen, we try and tell students to take things a step at a time, and you'll have learned what kind of culture you fit into. So it's not necessarily the wrong step, it's just something that you then get to move on from, and luckily that move on to something much better. Anything to add to that, Gayle? Any sort of things that you've learned from, or worst career decisions?
I think I've been with Northern Film and Media for forever, and before that I was at Screen Commission. My job has changed massively, which is probably the reason I'm still there, to be fair. If I was still taking location photographs, I probably would have got bored pretty quickly. But actually the big jump for me that I did really struggle with was, I was a civil servant. I'd been there 10 years. Civil service at that point was a career for life. I was on the promotion ladder and all the rest of it. And my secondment was meant to be 6 months, and then I was heading back. And actually taking the decision to move from civil service to a little baby 3 people non-profit making organisation felt really massive at the time, because, you know, they had funding for a few years, whereas, you know, I did that whole kind of, oh, I could come back, couldn't I? Maybe not, you don't know. But actually, I think because of that, when I took the job, I did really, really embrace it. You know, in the time I've been on my secondment, hadn't taken a day off because I absolutely loved what I was doing. So yeah, it felt really massive at the time. And typically, I'd just bought my first house and I'd just bought a new car, and then they said, "Will you stay?" And that decision at that point felt massive. Never regretted it. I guess it could also be, you know, if the bottom falls out of non-profit making organisations, it could also be the worst decision I ever made. But at the minute, it doesn't feel like that. It took a lot to do it, and I'm really pleased I did. And sometimes you do have to just take that risk and know that it is going to be all right. There is, you know, I think you're right when you say bad decisions. Is there ever a bad decision? Because actually, things do have a tendency to work out, and usually something traumatic pitches up with the next best opportunity that you can get. So
perfect. And I think that raises one of the questions that a lot of, or at least the worries that a lot of people face in this type of industry, this type of creative industry, is it's often filled a little bit with instability, whether it's sort of short-term contracts or if they're sort of looking at freelancing or starting their own business. There is quite a lot of risk involved sometimes, and you may be moving from a 6-month contract to a 12-month contract to an 8-month contract, and that's how you build your career and your work and life. So Gayle, I'm obviously working with people that potentially are in that position, and Sarah-Jayne moving from sort of roles. Is there anything that you would sort of say to students that potentially are facing that worry?
I think to work in film and TV, you have to embrace it. Mm-hmm. You have to know what it is, understand what it is, and work out how you manage that. Interestingly, we've got a couple of events coming up actually that are all about being freelance. And they're all about, yes, the things like your tax and your national insurance and your expenses and all of that kind of stuff. But they're also about building your resilience. And they're also about how you work through that and how you stop yourself from going crackers while you're trying to do it. So I think, and there will be some people who it just isn't for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there are other jobs, you know, there's other jobs in film and TV that don't involve being freelance. You know, there's production company jobs where you are part of the company rather than part of the team that come in and do the filming. There's jobs in peripheral organisations. So it's thinking about things like that. And ultimately, I think you have to look at it, understand what it is, and then work out, is that for you? And know that there's nothing wrong. If it isn't for you, there will be something else.
Yeah, I think with anything, it's a cliche, but it's high risk and high reward. If you are a creative person and that's what you want to do, you'll soon forget the disappointments and the not working for a little bit and writing lots of CVs and not hearing anything back. When you have a day at work that you just think that didn't even feel like work, that was, you know, great fun, and you get to do something you love, maybe not every day, because that, you know, that's not life, but you know, for a lot of the time, and I think it depends on what you're motivated by. Some people are motivated to make a lot of money and have stability, and some people are motivated to have a job that they love and it's their passion. So yeah, it depends how you are. But I think as well, thinking about it in terms of a PR job as well, a lot of it is you have to be a little bit resilient. You are chasing after things quite a lot, and a lot of the time you'll work towards things and things might not work out. You might not get any coverage. You've put a lot of effort into something, but it's all experience at the end of the day, and it does make you more resilient, which is only a good thing.
Brilliant. And if that is something that you are interested in, I'll give a little shout out to our startup team. They are excellent. They've supported so many students into their own businesses or support them freelancing. So if it's something that you're thinking about doing, get in there from year one. Speak to some of the freelancers. It's possible to build a really good career in that area. Attend events that are bespoke. I know obviously you mentioned film media do some. There's Screen Skills that do some as well, that are there to help you connect with these people and like we say, talk to the people. That's the way you find the information, and the way you build your connections. So that's fantastic. I think we'll take one more student question, and then I've got one last one for you. So we've got a question here about sort of building knowledge of industry in respect of sort of both sectors. Is there any sort of recommended resources or reading that you would suggest for students that are looking to develop their knowledge of both your respective industries?
I don't know about reading. I would say just immersing yourself in terms of media and public relations. Know what's going on with the news, be aware of what's going on. You don't have to be super, know all your politics back to front, but you do need to have an idea of what's going on in your sector and the world in general. So I think just keep listening, have your ears open all the time. There's not really any specific outlets I'd say to go to. I mean, there's tons. There's all sorts of channels, especially for women that are looking to go into PR and stuff. Like there's channels like Women in Marketing and stuff like that, and they do a lot of resources, a lot of like teaching and stuff. But yeah, just stay aware of everything. Social media is a great tool. Use it to your advantage. If you're interested in anything to do with like marketing, public relations, just stay on it all the time. Follow the right people. Yeah. They'll have a lot to teach you. A lot of people have blogs and stuff that they write on professionally. They're like always putting the latest industry news up and stuff. So I would just say that. It's a bit general, but
and I think I would say film and TV is pretty similar. There's, you can access so many people now on Twitter and Facebook and on all the socials and LinkedIn. Try not to crowd it though. Try to work out what areas you're interested in. Obviously there's Northern Film and Media, I'm going to say us first, but then there's also Creative England, who do what we do, but they cover the whole of England. And wherever you are in the world after university, there will be a film commission or a screen commission or a development agency like us in that area. Screen skills for training. One of the things I often get people say, I just want to work in telly. It doesn't work like that. You need to be able to go knowledgeable about the departments, the roles and all the rest of it. Screen skills have an amazing area on job profiles. BBC have a similar thing, BBC Academy have a similar thing. We have some, although I'm loath to say it, Screen Skills is better than ours. Although we are doing some videos for ours, which will make it more snazzy. But those kinds of things, follow the trends. Sarah-Jayne was saying, follow the trends. I am often amazed by how many people want to work in film and TV and don't actually watch film and TV. And it's not about watching it because you're enjoying it. It's about watching it and starting to unpick it a little bit, think about how it might have been different, think about, is that the kind of program you would like to work on? Because ultimately, in general, companies that make one type of program will make more of that type of program. So there's no point in going and talking to them about something completely different. So it's about knowing your industry. Screen Skills is a great place to start. But then you've got BAFTA, you've got BEC2, you've got a million kind of unions and things like that. And I'd also go back to TV Water Cooler, the unit list and the call sheet. They post so much stuff on there. And they, similarly, there's blogs, there's advice, there's recommendations, there's where not to go, a whole load of stuff like that on there as well. Yeah. So there's a lot out there, but they would be kind of my recommendations, if you like.
Perfect. I think one of the reasons I wanted to ask that question is because we sometimes get that type of thing in the career service, students coming in, new students especially, asking what to read. And I think there's a difference sometimes between building academic knowledge, where you can certainly read all those things, and then building your industry and understanding. And I think the message coming from both of you is what we try and enforce, and that one, staying up to date with what's happening in the world is useful for so many different careers. It helps build your commercial awareness, which so many companies are looking for as well. And then using that social media, using the things that you are interested in on a daily basis anyway, staying to, if it's film and TV, actually watch the credits and figure out what's happening and what roles are in each sector. So we also have a couple of pages on our career service website that give you some of the links that, for example, Gayle, that you've mentioned, like BAFTA, like screen skills, like Creative England, Creative Access, these types of things. So you can start to build that industry knowledge and build your professional Twitter profile and who you're following. So check out the Explore Occupations thing on our career service website, I would say, is a good shout as well. The final thing that I ask is a final question that we're asking everyone in these sessions today. So it's just sort of considering your own careers or time at university, what's the one bit of quick advice that you would like to share with the partner students that are embarking on their university studies?
For me, if you want to work in TV, don't give up. It is challenging, it is competitive. The people who do it absolutely love it. And so many times I see life gets in the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really, really want to do it, don't give up, take every opportunity and just be there. It doesn't matter whether you were bottom of your class, whether you passed or whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is be there, be present and make a point of enjoying every second of it.
Perfect. Sarah-Jayne?
I mean, I feel like I've said it before, but I think don't be afraid to make mistakes or fail or have rejection, because the sooner you can get used to that, the better off you'll be in the long run. And I'm not saying this as somebody who's totally immune to rejection still, and like it you know, job hunting and university, and there is a lot of challenges, and like you say, Gayle, life does get in the way, but if it's not hard, it's not worth doing. So you've got to like persevere with it, I would say.
Perfect. I think those are really important messages, that building of that resilience and sort of the being there and throwing yourself into it. You're not going to find opportunities unless you put yourself out there for them, and sometimes that involves rejection. So I think they match up really well. We'll round the session out, but thank you very, very much. I can't say thank you enough.
You're very welcome. Anytime.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this recording of the Partners 2020 Ask the Expert session. We hope you found the discussion and the presentations from our guests useful and insightful. Remember to stay up to date with further advice from alumni and industry professionals. Subscribe to our Newcastle University Career Service YouTube channel, and you can follow us on our social media channels at NCL Careers on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. We hope to see you in September. Good luck and take care.